What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news as the fallout from Crown Jewel continues, as well as lots of other wrestling news. Join us now as we look at the WWE Superstars reaction to Saudi Arabia, possible cover-ups of wrestlers being mistreated there, which top wrestlers are not going back to Saudi Arabia, a new WWE hire, how Sting may have fared in the WWF, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Let's get straight into the first story as never again. As we mentioned in an earlier news video, there are many rumours surrounding what exactly happened, but it's clear superstars are upset with a number of issues related to their being stuck in Saudi Arabia. As we noted earlier, Vince McMahon and some of his inner circle left Saudi Arabia, as did a number of upper-card wrestlers who chartered a plane home. However, a large number of employees and independent contractors, that is WWE Superstars, were left behind with no idea whether the claim that their flight had experienced mechanical issues were true. Let's look at some of the wrestlers' comments and complaints. There are reports that some wrestlers were upset with Vince McMahon leaving Saudi Arabia, and more importantly his wrestlers behind. While we don't know whether Mr. McMahon knew there would be a problem with the wrestlers remaining in Saudi Arabia, assuming there was a problem besides mechanical issues on the plane, wrestlers are still upset as what they see him as leaving them on their own in an autocratic nation. During a recent episode of the Wrestling Observer Live, Dave Meltzer noted, "I heard that from many people, that Vince McMahon deserted them. The feeling was that because there was those problems that happened, in whatever it was, the waving contest was the term that was used. I heard that from one person who used that exact terminology to me, that they were pawns in a waving contest. But the whole thing is that it happened, and so Vince shouldn't have left because there could have been reprisals, and they believed that those were the reprisals and that Vince left them there, and then when he sent it to get guys out, it was only the top guys that were booked on television, not anyone else." The wrestlers' disgust isn't limited to Vinnie Mac, however. At least one wrestler made a veiled remark questioning the locker room leaders who left Saudi Arabia ahead of other wrestlers. Carl Anderson tweeted, "Looking forward to seeing who the locker room leader is on Monday. Keep in mind the various reports of poor morale in the WWE locker room and how much worse things might get after the Saudi Arabia trip from hell." But wrestlers are upset at being portrayed as unmotivated. Another problem was that the apparent perception that the wrestlers stranded in Saudi Arabia didn't do enough to get to SmackDown on time. After arriving home, Luke Harper took to Instagram to express his frustration over insinuations that the wrestlers stuck in Saudi Arabia weren't motivated enough to charter a flight home. Harper commented, "Larry, I'm home. I guess I didn't want it enough to pay for my own charter, but I'm home now. Hashtag not top 20. Wrestler Eric Young added to the conversation, commenting on the suggestion of wrestlers pooling their money to charter a flight home. "I'll pitch in, guys. Next time I'll have more pride in myself and take it upon myself to be better. What a world, what a effing universe." The OC's Carl Anderson discussed the situation on social media, tweeting, "Couldn't pay me enough to go back. Well, that's not true. I need a second pool, so..." Anderson's wife joined in as well, tweeting, "Second house, not a pool, but don't ever go back again. We don't need our daddy /puppy /mother lover /abs Anderson /best tag team etc. being held hostage while we're at home worried to death." Brad Shepard also mentioned a number of wrestlers who have already told Vince they're not going back to Saudi Arabia under any circumstances. The top talent names mentioned to me were Roman Reigns, Kofi Kingston, Andrade, Braun Strowman and Rey Mysterio. I'm also told numerous mid-card talents have quietly expressed their unwillingness to return as well, not to Vince McMahon though. But not everyone seems to be upset on what happened in Saudi Arabia. According to Ringside News, AJ Styles had a different take on things when he mentioned on his Mixer Gaming stream, Styles played some video games and discussed the recent Saudi Arabia incident for a bit. According to him, there is no cover-up and it was simply a mechanical issue. Styles clarified things with Ringside News reporting, "The Phenomenal One said that it was a paperwork issue, and then the person who came to refuel the plane had to leave and go home. He did note that he thought that was odd." Knowing promoters' ability to mesmerize wrestlers, Never Again may see wrestlers saying "never say never again" instead. There's already talk that the NXT stars' impact on SmackDown suggests that the wrestlers are expendable, making it more unlikely they may take collective action against the WWE, such as trying to form a union. But is there a cover-up of abuse towards superstars? One of the most interesting stories concerning the Saudi Arabia debacle was the possibility the WWE tried to cover things up. Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp reported, "Something I'm not sure how big seems like it's being covered for. Vince directed and ordered social media people to get videos from talent stating mechanical issues. Rather than going to social media to confirm the WWE's narrative of mechanical issues, a number of wrestlers instead stated their concerns and fears over what was going on. That doesn't seem to be the only cover-up. On the heels of this Saudi Arabia debacle, new reports have surfaced of wrestlers who have experienced problems in Saudi Arabia beforehand, only for the stories to be swept under the rug. For example, while discussing the delay in Saudi Arabia, Dave Meltzer explained, "It's a real tense story, and that the other part is I have heard so many different stories. I don't know what's true and what's not from different people about different things that have happened there on previous trips, and we never heard that either didn't happen, but everyone on talent now thinks that did or did happen and everyone thinks was covered up." However, Brad Shepard specified one incident during an episode of the Oh You Didn't Know podcast, saying, "I was told by a source in WWE that Renee Young was yelled at by what was described as religious police for not having her head covered in Jeddah, and General Sports Authority officials kicked them out of the arena while they were there for Super Showdown. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, just in the time frame that they were there." This story was denied by Renee Young, but it is possible this and perhaps other stories were covered up. Pro Wrestling Extra's Brad Shepard recently shared exclusive information on his Patreon account about the situation. A recent report from Dave Meltzer stated the government of Saudi Arabia sent a payment of $60 million to WWE during their travel debacle. One of my key sources on this story told me, "We haven't received shit." In an update, I'm told the GSA is considering scrapping the entire deal with WWE. Vince McMahon is trying to resolve the issue and obviously wants to move forward with the deal due to the financial benefit for his company. If the deal were to fall through, I'm told drastic budget cuts would be made. That's still a slight possibility regardless, unless Saudi Arabia pays on money owed. There's still hope internally that Vince can salvage the deal, but the situation is certainly not great at the moment. It's my understanding one of the challenges is a power struggle between people with varying levels of authority in Saudi Arabia, which only adds to the complexity of the situation. But moving on from the Saudi Arabia stories, let's get on to the next one, as the Evolution pay-per-view may be retired. According to Ringside News, the WWE has added its Evolution pay-per-view to the list of retired shows, putting its future in question. This comes just days after Stephanie McMahon suggested the show might return, albeit not in 2019. Next up, what might have been Sting in the WWF. Recently, Bruce Pritchard discussed what might have happened if Sting had come to the WWF instead of the Ultimate Warrior. While the Ultimate Warrior's run was incredibly successful, Pritchard feels Sting, who became a franchise player in JCP then WCW, could have thrived in the WWF. During an episode of Something to Wrestle With, Pritchard speculated, "Absolutely, yes, it definitely would have worked. Yeah, I just think it would have been a lot different, and I think that the talent would have been willing to work with Sting and put him over in that way. I think that the build would have been a whole hell of a lot different in the longevity. You wouldn't have seen as many controversies, let's say that with Sting. But that's what could have been with Sting in the WWF. What about what might have been with Eric Bischoff in TNA? Recently, Eric Bischoff revealed he was invited to join TNA when it first premiered in 2004. Obviously, he later worked in TNA in 2010. But during an episode of his podcast 83 Weeks, Bischoff commented, "I was approached by Jeff and Jerry Jarrett before they actually started that series, and they asked me if I'd be interested in coming on board. And I knew some of the people involved. Jay Haspin, who previously headed up the WCW pay-per-view division, was working with Jeff and Jerry. And I didn't have a lot of confidence in Jay, based on my experience working with him, and then when Jerry explained the business model to me, I was polite about it. I thanked him for reaching out to me, but I had no interest in it. That was the first time I'd ever heard of it, and subsequently, I may have dropped in on a portion of an episode or two just out of curiosity, but for the most part, it really wasn't on my radar." When asked if the WWE hired him to prevent TNA from grabbing him, Eazy-E replied, "Not at all. The way I heard it, my name had come up in a creative meeting at WWE, and there was some enthusiasm about it. The brand split was on the horizon at least, and it kinda made sense storyline-wise at the time. I can't speak for anyone in WWE at that time certainly, and I wasn't a part of any of those conversations obviously, but I don't think there was any concern at all on WWE's part about TNA becoming any kind of legitimate threat. Bischoff's run in TNA was a watered down rehash of the NWO angle from WCW, but one can only imagine how TNA may have fared with Bischoff in it from the very beginning. Bischoff recently discussed a conversation he had with Vince McMahon during Bischoff's brief tenure as SmackDown Executive Director. Bischoff talked on his podcast 83 Weeks about McMahon asking his view on AEW Dynamite. Vince asked me actually a couple of days after the first episode aired what I thought. I was pretty honest with him. I thought the action was good, but what really made that show stand out to me was just how engaged the audience is. The audience to me made this show so much better than the NXT show. Not that there's anything wrong with the NXT show. The action in the ring was great, the characters are great, there are a lot of great things about it. When you put a live event inside of a small confined studio kind of like TNA, I don't care how great the action is in the ring, it just doesn't have that big event feel to it. And lastly, a new performance center hire. The WWE continues to build up its training facilities, this time hiring Christopher Guy, better known as Ace Steel. Steel is known for his career on the independent scene as well as being the trainer of CM Punk and Colt Cabana. PW Insider notes Guy once played Donald Trump during a segment when Trump wrestled a Rosie O'Donnell impersonator. But there you have it guys, your wrestling news for 4th November 2019. What do you guys think of the whole Saudi Arabia situation? Is it a big cover up by WWE? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.